There are two distinct groups of writers out there, not divided by genre, style, or language, but rather by something much more important. There are writers who finish their novels and those who never do. Those who find success and those who find nothing but failure. Those whose hard drives inexorably fill up with manuscript after manuscript, and those who fail to even make it past the first page. Are these magical people who keep on writing somehow different than you and I? Have they tapped into some magical well of motivation that is unreachable to us mere mortals? To understand these two groups, we must first understand what they struggle and don't struggle with. There's a very subtle difference here that you need to understand, and I will do my best to illustrate it throughout the course of this video. One group struggles with being a writer, the other group struggles with writing. This is, as I said, an extremely nuanced idea, so please bear with me as I struggle to explain it. Let's start by talking about suffering. Suffering is defined as undergoing pain, distress, or hardship. It is a process that occurs over time. You can feel pain in an instant, but suffering needs to be drawn out. Stubbing your toe causes immediate, instantaneous pain. Slowly bleeding to death after the mortal wound that was inflicted upon you by stubbing your toe, that's suffering. What causes suffering is often a difference between our current state and a desired state, or the lack of something and the desire to have something. If you're craving a cupcake, then you will suffer to some degree until you get a cupcake. If you have a cold, then you're going to suffer with illness until you heal and get better. Enduring suffering is important because it's often necessary to achieve the good things that we want to achieve in life. A farmer suffers toiling in the fields in order to produce food to feed his family. You can print off a medical school diploma, but as I found out, it won't have the same value as one that you achieved with a whole bunch of suffering and, quote, having actually attended an accredited medical school. Understanding what will cause you to suffer and what suffering you're willing to endure is incredibly important. If you value something enough, then you can endure incredible amounts of suffering in order to have it. Whenever you suffer for something, you are also suffering to avoid something. A cancer patient suffers through chemotherapy in order to not have cancer. You suffer through your job in order to not be homeless. You suffer through a workout in order to avoid being out of shape. You will always suffer no matter what decision you make. You can avoid the suffering of eating vegetables by choosing a cheeseburger, but a lifetime of eating cheeseburgers will eventually catch up to you and cause a whole lot of suffering. If something is valuable enough, then the suffering you have to endure will feel easier and you will be more resolved to overcome it. As a writer, you will suffer whether you choose to write your novel or not. Writing is an incredibly fraught process. The self-doubt, the complexity, the massive time commitment, and a million other things make it incredibly difficult. Writing a novel, although it's rewarding, often carries with it a great deal of suffering. Yes, the process can be rewarding and there's a lot of joy that comes with the process of writing, but there's also a hell of a lot of suffering as well. On the flip side, not writing has its own costs and bears its own suffering. Never seeing your ideas come to fruition, never being able to share them with the world, never developing your voice, are all things that will make you suffer long term if you value these things. Humans were blessed with a brain that was smart enough to question the meaning of the entire universe, but too dumb to comprehend the answer that the universe provides. Writing is in its own way the only method we have to overcome the inherent limitations of the hunk of electrified carbohydrate absorbing meat that we are all stuck with betwixt our ears. Not being able to answer these questions, not gaining that insight and understanding into the workings of your own mind is something that you will lose if you decide not to write. If the suffering caused by not writing your novel is greater than the suffering that writing it will cause, then you will finish it and it will seem easy. The process will still be hard. Day to day you will struggle, but that struggle will be nothing compared to the struggle and suffering you will suffer if you quit. It's like if you have an Olympic athlete who's super dedicated and they're out training every day at 4:30 a.m., that training is going to be hard. There's going to be plenty of suffering, but the thought of not doing that training, the thought of not being there, enduring that suffering, doesn't even enter their mind. The writers who push past rejection, who absorb the bad critiques, who keep writing even when they're sick or they've had a bad day, they endure an incredible amount of suffering, but deep down, the process is actually easy because what this suffering saves them from is so much worse. It's like if I told you you have to carry a backpack up a steep hill and there's a 100-pound backpack and a 200-pound backpack. The 100-pound backpack is still going to be hard to carry up the hill, but it's half as hard as carrying the 200-pound backpack. So many people look at writers like this and they're like, how do I get strong enough to carry that 100 pounds? That's not what it's about. That's not what it's about at all. How you achieve this is incredibly individualistic, and I don't want to pretend for a moment that I can provide you with a surefire answer here. You need to ask a lot of questions about what motivates you, what scares you, what you want to achieve, and who you want to be. If you know these things, it will allow you to see what is worth suffering for and what isn't. It's not so much about having an answer of how you do this, but asking the right questions. You can't avoid suffering. Even if you take every single easy decision in life, you're still going to suffer in some way. That suffering will, however, be endurable and perhaps even easy if the things you're suffering for are worth it. It can take a long time to figure this stuff out, and the only person who can figure it out is you, which means that I'm kind of superfluous to this entire process, and it's probably a good time to end this video. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the advice in it useful. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.